What if I told you that the contest of mayors has changed and no one is playing it right? Welcome to the first episode of this space about SimCity BuildIt, where strategy is not optional, where the perfect city is not built with luck, and where the winner is not the one who plays the most, but the one who best understands how to play. Today we're talking about the new contest of mayors. Is it really new? What has changed? Who is quietly benefiting? And most importantly, are you playing correctly? I'm Atlantis, and in this podcast, the first one I've ever done, and on this channel, we're going to go beyond the rumors, myths, and common mistakes. I'm joined today by two people who live and breathe the game. They understand it, enjoy it, and squeeze every last drop out of it. So strap on your helmet, open your mind, and get ready, because this isn't just another video. It's your next upgrade as mayor. As for this first episode, I knew one thing for sure. We had to have real gamers, legends perhaps, gurus maybe, but above all gamers who sweat over every task as if their lives depended on it and who shout finally when they finish. Gamers with soul, with battle scars and index fingers bent from swiping so many leagues on the screen. That's why I'm joined today by two friends of the house, two people I admire for their honesty, their perseverance, and their understanding of the game. The first is someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to get noticed. Calm, strategic, and dangerously consistent at the top. Legion Man is a gamer who has made efficiency an art form and leads by example. When he decides to compete, no one can take the most important prize in the league away from him. And the second, well, if you've seen him compete, you know he goes all out. Nacholandia is a relentless competitive force with a critical and brilliant eye for the game. And he's always looking for ways to improve. Both compete every week, but more importantly, they play with passion, intelligence, and respect. So with that said, welcome to the first episode of the SimCity BuildIt podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. How are you? How are you, Leg?
Well, thank you very much, my dear Tis. This is a big surprise because, as you say, it's the first podcast we've been invited to participate in, just as we are now part of this great community called Isla Atlas, of which I am extremely proud. At the same time, I enjoy pleasant moments with each of you as colleagues. I think I have experienced different moments with each of you, from wars and contests of mayors to conversations and chats. And now here we are meeting each one of you, and at the same time, spending time with our good and esteemed colleague Nacho. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to you. How's everything going, Nacho?
Thank you very much, Atlantis, for your kind words. I think you're exaggerating a little.
None of that.
The truth is that there are many players who play very well. And, well, with our vision, due to the new changes that are taking place in the game, we are gaining experience and insight into how things should be done. I'll be happy to share my opinion, and maybe we can learn from each other. Thank you very much for your initiative, because I believe that not only those who may be listening to us, but also ourselves will be able to improve our game and enjoy it.
Sure, Nacho. Both of you have been at the helm of your own clubs. Legion Man was in charge of the Sublimex club until he transferred it to me. And now he is the current Isla Atlas 1. Nacholandia is the founder and president of Tartessos, which is made up of 3 clubs associated with the Isla Atlas Federation. Well, the main topic of this podcast couldn't be anything other than the new SimCity BuildIt contest of mayors. The title says it all, but you already knew that, of course, because it couldn't be anything else. For those who haven't heard, the guys at Track 20, who are the developers of the game, have decided to modify the contest of mayors that we've had for about 10 years, more or less. On June 25th, 2025, they made the transition and with it made a profound change to this aspect of the game. Of course, I understand that all this has caused a bit of chaos and polarized people's opinions about the new contest of mayors. Look, I was going to say that it's like when trains came out in the game, but at that time there was a stronger feeling of disappointment that I tried to change at the time. But no, now it's something different. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people hate the changes. In short, there are all kinds of opinions. That's why the idea behind this podcast is to debunk myths, see what has changed, what people really think, what mistakes they're making, what mistakes the developers have made, and where the contest is headed. Let's see if we can get some tricks out of our guests. Also, at the end of the podcast, I'm going to ask our guests some questions that people have left on the Discord server about the contest, to see if we can put them in a tight spot. Well, first of all, I wanted to briefly list the changes that have been made to the contest, because there are a lot of them. For example, the types of tasks, which are now daily, weekly, and additional. I hope these things are understandable in English because I'm used to their Spanish translations, and I hope I pronounce them correctly in English. I hope listeners will forgive me if I or any of the guests don't say them correctly in English. The points have also changed. Now there are plum up points, which are the usual green ones, pass points, which are purple, and event points, which are pink. There is also the use of golden tickets, which greatly changed the dynamics of the game. There are also new coins, which are now transformed into seasonal coins. There are more changes, more subtle ones, but I guess they'll come up as we talk. Let's start with the types of tasks. What do you think of this classification of tasks, apart from how chaotic it can be? Nacho, what do you think of the daily, weekly, and additional tasks? The fact of having this structure.
Yes, first of all, I would like to say that in general, most of us are very traditional and reluctant to change. I remember other changes that have been made to the game, such as when regions appeared and people said, this is going to ruin the club. I had teammates in my club who said it was a disaster, or the same thing about trains. But in this particular case, I see more advantages than disadvantages. The only thing is that, of course, we'll keep talking about it. I think there are a lot of things to talk about, a lot of strategy, but in principle, I see a lot of advantages in the task system. The weekly tasks are practically what the old milestones used to be. We had 3 and they would appear. It was a surprise. For example, I have the city I work with the most, Rusadir, where I compete with a stronger club. With the other 2, my goal is to get 550 SIM cash. What I meant was that now it's much easier for me to see what the 10 weekly tasks are, so I can organize myself and decide what I want to do and what I don't want to do, or what I want to do first. With Rusadir, I usually go camping. I do everything I can at the campsite because it's easier to do at the lower levels. As you progress, it gets much more complicated. So there are a number of tasks that I don't do, that I don't normally do. For example, improving residential zones, because those help you advance. So if I know I'm not going to do any, I delete them and move on to the next one. That's an advantage over the previous version, because in the previous version, you lost the chance to achieve a milestone. Here, you replace it, which is an advantage.
Sorry, but it's so that people listening to us who don't know what camping is can understand. Anyway, there's going to be a trick on my YouTube channel where I explain it. Although at the moment it's only on my Spanish YouTube channel. But basically it consists of maintaining a certain level of city experience. Because when you're at that level, you get certain advantages. That's camping for those who don't know. Go on, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, it was just a clarification.
Not at all. I think the clarification is very timely. Another advantage for me is the additional tasks, because before the system allowed you to do the normal tasks, which are those additional tasks up to a certain point, and then you had to do 15 extra tasks for which you had to pay a golden ticket. Now, right from the start, they cost a number of gold tickets, quite a lot more, but we also have more gold tickets thanks to the initial gift we were given and the possibility of winning new tickets as we progress through the pass. And not just here, but in other parts of the game as well. So for me, it's been a revitalization. In fact, I've won the first 2 of this new era, and I'm well into the 3rd.
The truth is that, in my opinion, they got it right, especially because before there were tasks and milestones that were confused with city challenges or mayor challenges. Now that they're called, first, they're simply called tasks. Daily task, weekly task, additional task. And I think it's less confusing for newbies. But anyway, Leg, do you think people are understanding it? Now that you're in Isla Atlas 1B, I'm sure you're getting a closer look at what people who aren't as expert as you think, but in the end, they give you a more realistic idea of how these changes are being experienced. Do you think people are understanding it?
Okay, yes, Tis. Indeed, we are talking about how each one of us, our colleagues just like Nacho, have many ideals in common regarding this new challenge of the contest of mayors. First of all, I would like to share my passion, my enjoyment, my enthusiasm, and my affection for this game, since we have been playing it for some time now, and for that reason, we have grown very fond of it. As for what you're saying, I think that to elaborate on the question about the contest, it really became, well, if I may say so, a little annoying. A little annoying and uncomfortable, because often the changes that developers make are not what users want. In this case, us as gamers.
Yes, of course.
So I believe that the dynamics or changes that are sometimes implemented are not fully understood by these types of people who are supposedly responsible for addressing collective needs. Therefore, I personally believe that this change was not very well received, even though it could generate some benefits. Benefits that obviously each of us could enjoy by changing the way we play and approach the challenges we face in these types of competitions. For me, this new change is neutral. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's neutral in the sense that it's always good to see new things that make us feel alive within the game. On the other hand, I think we could well see some negative aspects. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but one of the negative aspects is that they could have supported us with some prior information, perhaps some kind of style or game mode that would have allowed us to try out this trial and error part to get to know how this contest works. However, in the first stage, which was the first week of the contest, I chose to get to know it thoroughly, perhaps taking on some simpler tasks, not using up so many tickets, doing the tasks that appear to be easier, and doing several tasks at once. The truth is that I had no intention of competing. I just wanted to get to know the game. At the same time, I am someone who analyzes my teammates and my rivals a lot, who are, of course, also friends in the game. If at any point any of them hear or see me, I would like to tell them that for me it is a healthy and motivating competition. But on the other hand, I tend to analyze their playing style a lot to see how they are progressing in this contest. I see how many points they have in an hour, a day, or a day and a half. It's very important for me to see the strategy each gamer follows. If I see a gamer advance a lot overnight on the first day, for example, 200,000 points, it doesn't make me give up on the contest, but I find it suspicious. I'm not sure they're playing correctly. So I analyze the playing style of my fellow players in the same community a lot. I was rereading what was being said in the different rooms, such as the current version and the bugs. Of course, I also analyzed some of the details and relevant points regarding the changes made in each phase of the contest. We even speculated about how this or that might work. So I think that helped us a lot, right? When we entered these rooms, Tees, you did a great job on these servers where we were able to read each other and see how the situation was working. In that regard, I think I'm a little neutral about the changes. However, I also appreciate that they are giving the game this dynamic aspect and that it feels alive, that it hasn't become obsolete. I say this because I've been playing the game for some time now. I'm not one of the initiators, but perhaps I'm in the early stages. I remember that contest where there were certain challenges similar to today's, but perhaps there wasn't as much complexity and there was more availability to do our activities within the tasks. And today I realize that this new contest makes us get more and more involved. That is, we are doing our tasks and keeping track of them. So I think that today you can win this contest in different ways. Greater participation and camaraderie are needed. I can see that there is also a certain benefit for those who are paying for passes. I don't think it's entirely necessary to pay for a pass, but when it comes to tickets, there is a greater advantage as they are indispensable.
We'll talk about it because I have a few things prepared and we're going to continue discussing these issues because I really like your powerful idea about all these changes and what they mean for people. In fact, along the same lines, developers are now implementing the new points. There are now 3 types of points: green, purple, and pink. And people are starting to get quite confused because each task offers a different number of points. You know, I'm making a table to clarify all this and draw powerful conclusions about the contest of mayors, but it's complicated. Listeners may think it's very easy to draw conclusions, but it's not at all. To help listeners understand, I'll give a very brief summary of the points. The plum points, which are the ones we've always had, the ones that make you progress in the league and win or lose your league prizes, are the green ones. Then there are the pass points, as the game calls them. Some people call them purple gems. Well, they're what make you progress in the mayor's pass. There are a lot of subtleties here. It's confusing a lot of people. There's a limit, as Leg pointed out when the contest started. If you want, Leg, you can tell us what you think about it later. The thing is, these points help you progress in the Mayor Pass. That is, they are what you will need to get the 550 Sim Cash for the free pass. Then there are the event points, which are pink and were also there before. These help you progress in the events. That hasn't changed. Of course, all this is a whirlwind of information that can be quite overwhelming. Nacho, how have you managed all the information about points in your Tartessos club? Later we'll talk about how gamers are adapting to all this. Leg has already given us a lot of information, which is very interesting. But I mean how you've managed it as president. Have you had to provide a lot of information and clarification, or are people understanding it as they go along?
We've talked about it, and indeed, those of us who are most involved have gone, well, I agree with Leg in what he said, which I also believe that we've all missed it, that there have been many changes, very sudden changes, without really explaining how it worked, right? I, for example, made the mistake of thinking that with the pass limit, I don't know what they're called now, the purple gems.
Yes, purple gems.
That limit also restricts. The COM, however, does not. So there are different strategies, right? What you say about advancing in the pass, which is to achieve a monthly goal, and the COM, which is weekly, which you don't have to pay too much attention to. So, well, we were drawing conclusions. At first, many people said, oh, I'm not mathematical at all. This is very complicated. People got quite discouraged. I'm speaking from my experience at Tartessos, my club, right? But little by little, we've all come to understand more, also thanks to being on Isla Atlas and sharing our vision and experience. We've been on Discord, and we've gotten a lot of information thanks to everyone's experience. Now I have a much clearer picture, but I'm sure I'm missing things. What you say about passes to advance, event passes, I'm not interested in that at all. But I may have to pay attention to it. Right now, I'm more into gems and the COM itself, with plum bob points.
Actually, at first I didn't know if once I reached 130,000 points, I would be able to continue doing more tasks. And between that and the fact that I'm doing a lot of testing to understand the mechanics, especially the internal mechanics of the contest, I'm not doing very well in the contest right now. Leg, how do you see the limitation of 130,000 points per week for the pass? Well, it was 130,000 at first, because I think you were one of the first to reach that limit. But then we understood that the limit changes as you progress through the new weeks of the pass. But I remember when I was starting to think about the first tasks, and I saw you say on Discord, I'm about to reach the 130,000 limit with my secondary. I said, wow. I said, you're amazing. And I thought, I haven't even had time to think about what tasks to do. How do you feel about that limitation they put in place at the beginning? I don't know if it's a limitation that has progressed as we've gone along in order to reach the total limit of points for the pass. How do you feel about those limitations now?
I just heard it from my colleague Nacho. He was saying that we're not usually very mathematical. However, what this game has, I think, is that we're passionate about the difficulty. If it were an easy game, extremely simple, I think we would have given up on it, or rather we would have gotten bored. I don't mean that it's the most entertaining thing ever, but it is complex. But those challenges are what make us feel satisfied with the game. Now, going deeper into the topic you mentioned about the purple gems, which I heard for the first time from my colleague Nacho, well, I usually call them that so as not to get confused about the subject. I think we'll start with that part, right? They're gems, purple diamonds, I don't know. They're those purple points. I'm actually quoting my colleague Nacho here, who was the first person I heard use that name. I would like to tell you, Tis, and the entire community not to focus too much on the purple gems. Why? Because in the end, you will advance regardless. They do tasks, well, mainly doing tasks, of course. But if you do tasks, you'll advance and reach the limit. And it's okay if you can't advance any further in the Mayor Pass. Why am I telling you this, Tis? Because, look, I think we're in the third week of the Mayor Pass, and the tasks have been increasing. So it's not like they're limiting us so we can't finish it. As for prizes, in some cases, this pass provides us with gifts, but there will also be certain priorities that I believe depend on each of us. For example, when it comes to plummet points, we will focus more on them when we want to compete in a contest and obviously obtain a position that benefits us in terms of SimCash. But there will also be those who say, I don't want to compete to win. I'm happy with 525 or even nothing just to stay in the top league, which in this case is the Mega League, if I'm not mistaken, the Megalopolis League. Now, there will be those who decide, you know what? I'm really interested in the event. The event is currently offering infrastructure or a building, as we usually say, a building that interests me, a building that I need, a building that I don't have, a building that has a great benefit for the population. So you'll have to focus more on saying, oh, I want to get more of these pink gems or pink points, where you'll actually do tasks to achieve that. What do I mean? Well, you also need a certain strategy, and I'm telling you this because I've done it myself.
Yes, there is definitely a very important strategic component in the new COM, and I'll tell you why. I've been analyzing it and I'll give you some details later, but what you say is very interesting because the strategy has changed, the evolution has changed. It has gone from being something like, I'll do it one way or another, it doesn't matter, or a bit mechanical, to having to come up with a strategy. I agree with both of you that there has been a lot of information missing from the developers, a terrible mistake. In fact, I was looking not only at the Isla Atlas Discord server, but I also went to other SimCity servers in English and even on Telegram. And the chaos that ensued in trying to understand everything was tremendous. It's a shame, because all this could lead to disappointment, and in fact it does. There could be a lot of people giving up just because they haven't been given enough information. That's why I was interested in doing this podcast, because you're already giving some very technical and important information that people need to consider. There were people on the servers I've seen who said they were now only playing the wars. Of course, because there was a major problem on top of the misinformation, the numerous bugs that have appeared. Here's another one.
Indeed, it is. I think the issue of errors has also been very notable, as some colleagues have been affected. One of the things that surprises me the most, and which I hoped you would mention, well, I think you will mention it in due course, is what happened to our colleague Nacho when he realized that he had lost, well, more than lost, his golden tickets had disappeared. I wonder what the intention was, what change or modification was made. I really find that intriguing. How can that affect a user, a colleague who is very dedicated to the contests, and even more so if it happened to each of us who are also competitors and very interested in winning big prizes? I think it would make us give up. Maybe we wouldn't give up the game altogether, but we would take some time off. And in taking some time off, we might lose interest and say, I don't intend to come back. So I think the developers have made changes that they haven't fully explained and that they haven't really considered each user. They simply made changes to these servers without consulting the community first, for example, through a survey or forum, to find out if this is what gamers want. I believe that the developers of this game owe it to their community. So what could be better than listening to their community? This would have a greater impact and be more efficient, effective, and efficient within the SimCity community. Now, TIS, on the other hand, I'll also mention that I've seen some other bugs that may not be as relevant. For example, like, I don't know if you've noticed that when you buy the war pass, there aren't as many animations when you get rewards beyond the chests. The chests are the only ones that have animation. So I'm realizing that the servers are possibly adding new dynamics or making these changes, but they're reducing some other movements within the game. Maybe they have some limits on their servers, and that's why they prefer to remove details like these animations and add new things to get the community more interested in the contest.
I know that making a game is complicated. I know that as a computer scientist. And I am aware that bugs are almost inevitable, but it's clear that one of two things is true. Either they don't have beta testers, or if they do, they've done a very poor job, because something as simple as not counting daily tasks opens the door to strong criticism, and rightly so. It's true that they acted quickly, we have to admit, but Salkus, well, you know him, but the audience doesn't. Salkus is the current president of Club Isla Atlas 1B, and he told me about a new bug. The daily tasks weren't being counted unless you activated the COM every day. Let me explain. The daily task consists of sending 5 trains, for example, and it's requested every day for the 7 days of the contest. Well, if you don't go into the COM first and send the trains before you've logged in, they don't count. You can send as many as you want, but they won't count. So, until you enter the contest, they won't count. And I think that although the behavior could be intentional as a trick that I explain in the best method for something else, I think it's a mistake, because if you already know that the daily tasks don't change, when you log in every day, you do those tasks directly without thinking, especially without thinking that you have to activate the contest. I don't know if there are more mistakes, because then there are mistakes like, I get the storage task and I already have the storage full and it's impossible to do the task. Well, it's a bug that affects certain mayors, but the first one, the one about not counting, was terrible, and luckily it's already been fixed. This second one from Salkus is still there, and today, in August 2025, it still hasn't been fixed. You can check it right now. If you haven't entered the game, send 5 trains and then enter the contest. It won't count.
You've pointed out 2 errors. Well, one of them couldn't really be called a bug because I'm not entirely convinced about it. But as for what you said about opening the contest of mayors so that your tasks can be carried out, that's very true, very true. And I think I should share that. Since I noticed it, I may not have had the opportunity to share it because I thought it might be due to individual errors. I even thought it was part of my connection or my devices because I play on 2 different servers. Then I thought it might be an interface or connection problem. However, I realized that it is a collective problem. Indeed, our colleague Solkos made an excellent observation. You first have to open the contest of mayors for that task to be executed. You may have to carry out or impact those points, right? And then you can collect or request them. So in that regard, I think it has made me feel a little insecure, Tis. It has made me feel insecure. In what way? Well, many times when I go to perform a task, whether it's one of the daily ones, well, we already know what the daily ones are like, right? But with the milestones, I still call them milestones, these weekly tasks. Later on, I'll share why I use milestones or weekly tasks, but I also do it a lot with additional tasks. I usually open the contest 2 or 3 times and check that I have activated the task with the tickets. Why do I do that, Tees? Because look, it's been an insecurity I've had with the different contests I've participated in, since sometimes I've forgotten to activate the task and do it. That is, I'm already eager to do the task or activity.
Yes.
And Out of nowhere, I entered the contest and didn't activate it. So what happens? I think you first need to check whether the task has been activated beforehand, right? Once, twice, or 3 times, because it's an insecurity I've created for myself based on previous contests, but at the same time, it annoys me when I haven't activated that task. Why? Well, I'm telling you this because it used to happen to me a lot with war tasks. We all know that when you carry out war attacks, you do them. Once you do, you go back to your home screen or where your capital city is, and then you go into the contest and want to collect or be awarded those points. However, you realize that you haven't selected them and you get angry and say, oh, how is that possible? I forgot. This is a bug, a problem, a detail that needs to be analyzed. Going back to the war, it's obvious. I mean, just to be clear, we already know that we have to recharge our energy again, and that depending on the arena you're in, you have to wait, right? That kind of timing can cause certain setbacks or limitations because your battle monster can run away or the war can end. There are so many reasons why we have to be extremely strategic, but at the same time, we have to be very cautious with these kinds of issues, right, Tis? Well, I think so. It's a bug, or more than a bug. It's a change they made to make us pay more attention to our contests. But at the same time, I don't think I'm the only one who has these kinds of insecurities about having to check first to make sure you've activated those tasks so you can complete them, right?
Can you tell if gamers are adapting to the new contest despite the bugs we've been mentioning?
They adapt, and as they discover things, they see that it's not so different. As we've already said, there are variations, but most of us, myself included, are adapting and seeing that there aren't really any major differences. Our way of playing doesn't have to change that much either. It's true that there are some who say, this is too much for me, especially those who haven't seen the whole theme yet. But little by little, thanks to the fact that we're a team and we exchange opinions, I think we'll get over it. We'll resolve all the doubts about the game. It's true that we've always talked about the issue of we're very comfortable in our comfort zone, and it's hard for us to step outside of it. But as we understand everything, I don't think it will be a problem.
And besides, the podcast was designed for this very purpose.
Of course.
Yes, I wanted to sort out all the chaos that has been caused by the new addition and the change to the contest. Leg, how do you think gamers are adapting to the new contest?
Very good, Tiz. That's an excellent question. And why do I say that? Because we've noticed that our colleagues at Play are very intrigued by the new mechanisms implemented by these developers. At first, there was a lot of motivation to learn about them. In the first pass, let's say, where we're getting to know Chicago a little bit, I can personally say that I've seen improvements, so to speak. However, as for my colleagues, I would say it was pleasant. It was pleasant perhaps because we had already left the castle team behind, so I think they will continue to come out, but it had already changed. It had already changed. It's a dynamic of the game that really caught our attention. First, there's the pass. Therefore, I think the theme of the new award is important. I can't remember the name of the tower that adds color to your city. More than color, it's like an ecosystem or a specific climate. It was interesting. It is interesting, isn't it? As always with these kinds of prizes, because they bring certain features. So the snowflakes, the palettes, the new seasonal coins, I think we were all looking in the different sections to see what they were for, how they benefited us, or what use they had. However, I think they've complicated the snowflake issue a lot because in addition to the contest, the purple gems, and the event points, you have to do more tasks to complete the city tasks. So, that's where we might have found some annoyance in saying, Hosame, hey, I'm missing out on the opportunity to get this building so I can complete it and acquire the star building. And then we started to point out certain drawbacks, right? It didn't get off to a very good start. On the other hand, we started speculating and mentioning that simultaneous tasks could be done. So the contest theme seemed very convenient. However, I must say that the contest continues to work almost the same as in previous weeks or months. Why do I say that, Tiz? Because look, personally, I think the only thing they've added are the daily tasks. I don't know if that's what they're called in English, I hope so. Those tasks that at the time had certain problems with the train, the coins, etc., that's the only new feature because the rest, the theme of the weekly tasks really remains the same as my colleague Nacho mentioned. Here you can already do some tasks. We can play with them, find out which ones we have, which ones to use, or which ones to do, so to speak. Well, regarding milestones, I have a trick that I find very efficient, and that goes hand in hand with what my colleagues have said. At first, it seemed very good. It's very good because you can do tasks simultaneously, right? However, I must share with you that if you want to win a bigger prize, it's not advisable to do tasks simultaneously. There are some exceptions.
In fact, all this to me, well, honestly, it seems to me that it forces you to be more strategic and less like, oh, I'll just do it however I see fit and whatever happens. Now you have to think about what to invest your golden tickets in, when, and how many. Because watch out, this is tricky. For those who don't know, strategy is now key for everyone. Many people were commenting that it was becoming a pay-to-win game, and there were even some funny memes about it. I don't know if you saw it on Discord, but there was a really funny meme that made me laugh a lot. It was the cover of SimCity. Have you seen it? It was the cover of SimCity. You know, it has normal white letters and then some caps that spell out Build It. Instead of Build It, it said Buy It. It was very clever, and I had a lot of fun seeing people's creativity.
Yes, I had the opportunity to see it.
But I've analyzed the tickets, and whether you pay or not, you can complete all 75 additional tasks each week, so it doesn't become pure pay to win. For listeners who don't know what pay to win is, it simply means that in order to win, to get the top prizes, you have to pay. Otherwise, you have no chance of winning the top prizes and have to settle for whatever you can get. And I think it would also have been a dangerous transformation of the game because it could destroy it. But after analyzing it, I see that it's not pay to win. Everyone has to work hard to be strategic. Obviously, those who pay will have more benefits, but that's another thing, as it's also normal to reward people who support the game financially.
Yes, Tis, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that point. I don't think the game is entirely pay to win, do you? They're just mechanisms that the developers have implemented to profit from updates. I imagine that everyone who works on the game's development also benefits. However, there are colleagues whom I admire for their track record because, as far as I know, they haven't bought any passes and yet they've been very successful. I'll give you the example of my colleague Chicoutimi. He's had some very notable moments and has won awards. I don't remember if he told us what awards he's won, but I've noticed that he's won some very good awards without having to pay.
He is usually very competitive. Yes, very competitive. Chicoutimi is an excellent gamer, especially in COM and also in Wars, but in COM he's very competitive, very voracious.
And we have to note that, as far as I can remember, my colleague does not usually buy passes in succession or does not buy passes at all, which is a legendary proof that this is not a game where you have to pay to win.
Of course, and that's still the case. That's what I wanted to convey. I mean, no, it has not turned into a pay-to-win game. I'll say it again. I've analyzed it down to the last detail. I have the statistics somewhere. I don't have them to hand right now. But everyone has to be strategic, and that's that. There's no pay-per-win. And that's good news, isn't it? It's excellent news.
Exactly. Now, Tis, I wanted to mention something that I'm not sure has been discussed in this section. Regardless of the changes made to the contest, there is something for which I am extremely grateful. I would like to thank the various programmers or whoever updated these new systems or this new system, the storage system. Let me explain.
Obviously, it's a brutal issue that we had to bring up now because it's very important. And yes, indeed, it's an improvement that I completely agree with you on.
I am very grateful for the storage feature. Why? Well, if the game, the contest, and everything that is being implemented has become complex, right? Storage is the counterpart to that complexity. It gives us the motivation and help that many of us need to manage our resources, such as items and raw materials, as well as their transformation. On that front, we can store larger quantities of items, allowing us to be more proactive in contests. What do I mean? There are very complex tasks that we know we have to do constantly. Let me give you an example. I often have to deal with production in commercial buildings, especially new ones. That production is very slow. I need up to 4 or 5 cheetah tokens to complete it. So even though I have them upgraded to 3 stars, I recently upgraded almost all my commercial buildings to the highest level to speed up their processes. This way, I can anticipate finding many products on the global market that are useful for completing those tasks. So the storage feature is very helpful, and I think we should be grateful to those who came up with the idea, and at the same time, let us know in advance that it was about to be released. As for only some cities benefiting from the early test, that's why I mentioned storage.
Sure, I analyzed each season on video. I analyzed what was good, what was bad, and what was happening with each game update. What was happening was that we were losing playability as we progressed, because they were adding more commercial buildings, more and more commercial buildings, more and more products, and we were losing a lot of playability. Suddenly, the new raw material storage appeared and increased the playability we had lost. But it hasn't just increased it, it's improved it. And that's very much appreciated. I completely agree with you. I don't know what Nacho thinks about it.
Well, the improvement, I was one of the lucky ones who had it in 2 of my 3 cities, and I could already see an impressive improvement. Nacholandia was the last to join, and I was really struggling FAMAS because, of course, it produces. I have it at level 99, and it required a lot of material, and I had a lot of space problems. As soon as the improvement was made, everything was solved. I'm delighted because you can play without having to worry about selling all the time. But of course, there's a negative side to this, a side effect. When you enter the global market, there's nothing there because everyone has the same problem. Well, with the older cities, for example, with Rusadir, I've been dealing with this issue and sometimes my materials fill up.
Are you referring to raw materials?
The raw materials one, yes. Sometimes the raw materials one fills up because several tasks come up. For example, making 40 sugar cubes. I don't know what the product is called.
Yes, sugar and spices.
40, another 40 or so. And then before I know it, I have 120. The thing is, with this city, Rusadir in particular, my storage is completely full. I can't expand, and that's one of the mistakes I've made. I still have the task of increasing storage, and I literally can't increase it, but they'll fix it eventually. I'm not in a hurry because I have a very large raw material storage facility. So we're adapting to the situation, and at the moment, what we're suffering from is that we can't find anything in the global market.
It happened to me too. Of my 6 cities, 2 had their storage modified in advance. I could see that the playability would increase considerably with this change. It's definitely been a good thing that benefits everyone, because we were getting bogged down, and they've completely changed the playability.
I completely agree.
But there's something even more interesting than all this. The mistakes people keep making in the contest. I don't know if you agree with me, but spending a golden ticket without thinking is a mistake. It's one of the mistakes people are already making because they don't understand the limitation of golden tickets. What do you think, Nacho?
Well, that's one of the things I'm perhaps making a mistake with because this is trial and error for me too. As I mentioned, I won the first 2 contests with my city, Rusadir, and I think I can win the third one too. I'll let you know, but I'm doing it at the cost of doing all 75 tasks. And in this third one, I've done 71 so far. I'm going to try not to do all 75 to save myself some time.
Saving, even if it's just a little, is important.
But anyway, I keep playing as usual, looking for the tasks with the most points. Because doing the tasks with the fewest points, which are the easiest, keeps the algorithm going. I don't know it perfectly, but it's clear that there's an algorithm. That's my intuition. Maybe you or someone from the Isla Atlas team has analyzed how the different tasks and their scores work. But I always try to do the ones that give the most points, because if you do a small one, you'll usually get more small ones. You might get a big one, but you'll usually get small ones, because in the overall calculation, the task algorithm will have a maximum number of tasks you can do, and that maximum will vary. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying a number, but imagine between 100 and 120 points, just for example, which aren't the real points, okay? But between 120, that's where it varies. So you want to do 100. I still do that. But it's true that you also have to be very clear about whether you're competing to win the contest, because you can't do it with all the cities and not everyone does it. There are many who have one city and don't compete. They compete to get at least 500 SIM cash. Maybe what they're looking for is to be consistent. Now, the game forces you to be consistent every week, because as you have limited progress in the past, you have limited progress each week. If you skip a week without playing, you might not reach 550 SIM cash, which is the grand prize for consistency.
Yes, Tis, that part is, I think, the crux of the matter in this new implementation of the Contest of Mayors. Why do I say that?
Seems like the key, right?
Exactly. Yes. Playing with tickets today, well, sorry, playing as it used to be played was a problem because you had to save a certain amount to be competitive in future competitions. So there were teammates who no longer had tickets to participate or to get good positions in the rankings. In this new version, we've realized that tickets are still a strategic way to play. And why do I say that, Tis? Well, because, as I mentioned earlier, when you want to win a big prize in the contest, you say, of course, you need more tickets. So you have to make an initial decision and ask yourself, what am I trying to do in this contest? That ranges from ranking, not getting demoted from a league, whether it's the major leagues or simply wanting to participate in the challenge to earn points, in the legendary chests, in the chests we have in the collective, or in everything that is the club. But on the other hand, it's also about earning points for the event, because maybe it's a very impressive building or one you want to acquire. On the other hand, it's simply a matter of earning points to complete the Mayor's Pass to get where you want to go. That was the first thing I did in the first week of this new version of the contest. Why am I telling you this? Well, because the first thing I did was to find out if once the purple gem limit was reached, you could continue doing tasks. If you couldn't, then you'd have to be extremely careful with the tickets. That's why it was feasible to do tasks that only required the fewest number of gold tickets. To that end, we can see that there are tasks that range from 10, 20 to 30 tickets.
Up to 40 tickets, and I would say I've seen one for 45, but I'm not sure.
Exactly. So you have to be careful if you're going to do tasks with a lot of tickets. When I realized that you could keep doing tasks, that's when you can choose to say how many tickets you have and how many you can use to get a bigger prize, right? Once we discovered that, we realized that you have to know how to manage your tickets. You don't have to spend them just for the sake of spending them. When you're going to compete in the events, you can do the minimum tasks, the ones that require the fewest tickets. What do I mean by events? Those events where they give you certain buildings that you already have and others that you might need, those ping point events. There, I recommend that you only do tasks that require between 10 and 20 tickets, not 30. Sometimes when they give you a lot of points, it is worth doing them.
That's great information, no doubt about it.
So you have to know how to manage that part of the tickets in this part of the events. But when you're competing in a contest and you're aiming to get 2,000, 1,000, or 500 sim cash, then you can bet on a larger number of tickets, right? Don't worry about the purple gem limit, because at the end of the day, it's a limit so that you don't finish the pass early and stop playing for the next few weeks. It's a new mechanism that the game has implemented to keep you more active every day or as many days a week as possible, okay? So far, I could tell you that the issue of tickets is something you should consider, that they can even be kept for a season, which I understand lasts about a month. You can stay ranked in the leagues without spending so many tickets. It's a matter of analyzing to what extent you can be declassified and to what extent you can be classified simply by not winning any prizes. But that's when you invest the least amount of tickets and save for the next seasons. And that's where I give you this little tip. You can participate some weeks and not others, but without being declassified and at the same time saving tickets.
There's an interesting component here. There's a progression of pass points. Therefore, in the fourth week, you will always have all the points you need to complete the pass, which is a lot more than the 130,000 purple gems you started with. It might be a bit of a strategy, but we'll see as we go along.
They'll keep reviewing it, maybe so people don't get discouraged. I don't know, because I think it's also a trial phase for them. I think they were at 195 in the second week. I'm not sure. But it's true, I've noticed that they've increased it again. I don't know if they're doing it gradually or if they're adapting to reality so that people who stay for a week and don't win the big prize, which is the one I consider the most important, don't get discouraged and quit the game or say, if I'm not going to win, I'm not going to participate in the contest anymore.
As the weeks go by, details that are currently unknown will be revealed. For now, we cannot speculate about them.
But I would tell those people not to spend too much. I already did that with my other two cities, which I don't really compete with week after week. But rather, I go for that monthly goal of earning 550 cash. I did some additional tasks, of course. Now they're called additional tasks. We do some additional tasks, but basically what you have to complete are the weekly and journal tasks. And with that, I think you complete the maximum they ask for weekly, which we have capped.
Sure. And besides, that will definitely keep you in the Megalopolis League, because if you do the minimum weekly and daily tasks, you'll probably escape the 80th place and avoid being relegated to the lower league.
Actually, it's always happened to me. I have Megalopolis and Heracles. It's only competed once, which was in the first contest. I took it very seriously because I was testing it out. I managed to win Megalopolis with Heracles coming in 4th or 5th, which gave me 500 SimCash. The only time I won, I never competed with it because it takes a long time. But normally, it's like you say, that is always well. And it's happening to me week after week. I practically only do the weekly missions and stay in Megalopolis. With Nacholandia, I've deliberately kept it lower because I often go for the Golden Keys prize, which are also necessary to improve attacks, right? And now I'm focusing. I have practically all the attacks I could improve in terms of SimCash, and I'm not improving them because I don't have enough keys.
That has always been the problem.
It's always been a problem. So now I'm also focusing on, well, everyone has to focus on something. I'm focusing on Nacholandia, Magnetism, and Mellow Bellow. Mellow Bellow is really big for me, and Magnetism is always useful, at least. But with Rusadir, I have other attacks that are more defined. My star attack is the Blizaster, yes. And yet the advice I'm giving, because we often learn from our own mistakes, is that I almost regret choosing a yellow attack. What are they called?
Rare attacks in Spanish, which I think are also called that in English.
Exactly, rare attacks because they're hard to get. In fact, I've already recommended to some gamers on my team that they focus on normal attacks because they allow you to perform powerful attacks, which are good for strong finishes with attacks that only require 15 SimCash for their cards, right? It's much more affordable and will make your life easier. You can focus on a Hands of Doom or there are several options now.
Yes, I get your point. We'll probably cover all this in another podcast because it's a very interesting topic and we can go into much more depth on what you're saying. But regarding what we were saying about people's mistakes, by the way, people are already making quite a few mistakes without even knowing it. It's something I'm talking about now, for example, in the videos for the new best method. I'm developing it now, but I'm letting those who have already paid for the method and are on the Discord channel know that the new contest of mayors has undergone some profound changes. Although it can be played in a similar way, for me the changes are so profound that even though the best method or part of it still works, I'm changing almost all the videos. And of course, what I was saying to Marta is that if it took me 6 months to create the best method, the modification is also going to take a little while. Not that long by any means, but I have to change a lot of things because the aim is for it to be of significant value to the gamer. When they watch the videos, which are more than 15 in total, they should know that they are going to win the contest almost every time they want to. Well, I haven't mentioned it before. The best method is a method for winning the contest of mayors whenever you want. At the moment there are about 15 videos, but they are only in Spanish. However, they will soon be available in English as well.
At this point, I wanted to clarify that I may also be making mistakes because I am not really considering that COM has become very strategic and we need to pace ourselves. So one of the things I do think I am doing well is not leaving all the weekly tasks to the end. Why? Because for me, let me give you an example. For example, I don't know if you remember, well, I'm reminded of a race in the Olympics that Fermin Cacho ran. Do you remember him?
Yes, I remember him. A great Spanish runner.
In the 1,500-meter race, he wasn't the fastest runner in the world, but it was a strategic race. He was able to hold back, move into first position, and set the pace for the race. He wasn't the fastest runner on the circuit, but a short race suited him. If we go into a long race and have few golden tickets, we won't be able to sprint at the end.
Yes, indeed.
Because you've done it before and you've reached the finish line exhausted. Other gamers have seen your cards and can overtake you. However, if you keep track of it, right now I'm third in the weekly pass. I'm third, but they're 20,000 points ahead of me, and I've got about 60,000 in reserve. But hey, I haven't counted them as there are 10 tasks a week, so I might be close to, I might have 90,000. I think a lot of them go to the limit, perhaps because of this strategic issue, and then you're the one who surprises them. That's what Fermin Cacho did in the 1992 race. He controlled the race very well. In the end, he had saved his strength and was unbeatable because the others were used to a fast and sustained race and it suited him to go slow. And I think we all have to see what our strategy is. I agree with what you say. The game right now is very strategic and we have to be very smart when it comes to tackling each race, in this case each weekly contest, and know how to manage it.
I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't. But anyway, within the best method, I come up with several strategies, and one of them is to move forward quickly and leave a certain amount for the end. But there is the strategy you're talking about. If you stay in first place, you kind of force the others to say, oh, another task, I'll do another task, I'll do another task, I'll do another task. To catch up, I'll do another task. And they're doing it wrong. And then you take advantage of the fact that you're doing it right to gain the upper hand. And it's like the example of Fermin Cacho, which I think is perfect because it's exactly right. It's strategy, intelligence. This has changed, hasn't it? This has changed and people have to understand it. I mean, you can't give it your all for 4 weeks, that's clear. I've analyzed it, and even if you pay, it doesn't matter.
Yes, I looked at it too. I don't remember now. I don't have the figures in my head and I didn't write them down. But I saw that the average number of golden tickets you spend is usually 30. It's true that there are some very interesting ones for 10 and 20. For example, the one related to the design challenge or the expansion of storage. But most are 30. There are some for 40. And those for, so basically, if you do 30 for 75, you get 2,250. And yet what you can earn in a week, well, in a month, because of course the whole pass, the upper and lower parts, if you've paid for it, well, I don't remember, but I don't think you made it. So you have to be strategic.
No, it didn't add up. I did it too. I don't have the figures either, but I calculated it too. I mean, I did the math, added everything up, and in the end, no way. It doesn't add up. It doesn't matter whether you pay or not. It doesn't add up.
Exactly, it doesn't add up. So some weeks you have to reserve yourself and stick with this race. And another week you say, I'm going to focus on this one and I'm going to win it. That's it. That's how we would do it. since we have several cities, I say, come on, I'm going to try Nacholandia or Heracles. In my case, I'm going to try to win with them instead of Rusadir, which I've burned out from running so much.
Well, while we're at it, do you think you can tell the difference between someone who plans a contest and someone who improvises?
Absolutely, of course, absolutely. And well, I'm also consistent. Anyway, I find the best method you're developing very interesting. I think it will give a very important strategic vision to colleagues who are able to acquire it. And that's it. Well, I think your initiative to talk about this on the podcast can help us a little. And let's also think that in the future, there will be new guests who will give their vision, and we will be eager to listen to them and learn. I think we are all learning here.
Yes, I'll give you a spoiler. There's going to be a second podcast. I already have the guests, they're confirmed, so there will be a second podcast. Well, now it's time to find out a little bit about where the Contest of Mayors is headed, and if you push me, where the game is headed in general.
Okay. In this section, Tis, that's exactly where I wanted to get to. There's a lot that I think each of my colleagues could share with us. But personally, I'm motivated by this new contest. Why? Because it's a challenge. I think my colleague Nacho feels the same way because he's already won 2 contests. That means he's also someone who loves these kinds of challenges or initiatives. So look, Tis, I think this is where the Contest of Mayors is going, or where the game is headed. There are many things I would like to see implemented, such as being part of a forum, because I have ideas that could contribute a lot to this game. However, I'm also adapting to what you're doing and to the times. I think, Tis, that right now, as we're having this conversation, the contest isn't that challenging. What do I mean? The fact that many people don't know how this contest works is a limitation for everyone. For everyone, what do I mean? So if it's a little difficult for us to achieve certain goals, it's also difficult for others. Even I noticed in my first contest with this new system that many people didn't score very many points. The prize was quite within reach given the number of points that had to be scored. That's why I perhaps regret a little not having participated in that first contest. Many took advantage of the opportunity to learn about it while participating, but many had no intention of competing. We all simply wanted to learn about it. That's why I think these first contests are, to a certain extent, easy. Easy in the sense that not everyone is that strategic yet. But this won't be the case in the coming weeks or seasons for those who already have well-established and well-planned strategies. Therefore, I think these contests are aimed at increasingly strategic users rather than those who pay to participate. This has a lot to do with the strategy each gamer employs. I could easily share my strategies prior to a contest, because you shouldn't start a contest just for the sake of it. There are quite a few things to consider.
Exactly.
Activities prior to the start of a contest. But there's something else I want to tell you, Tis. I believe I am part of this community of the method and that I can contribute a lot, but there is something above my strategies and even your method, if you'll allow me, and that is fellowship. Understood?
Absolutely.
Teamwork is undoubtedly the best strategy you can have in any contest and in any community, such as our beloved and cherished Isla Atlas community. When there is greater participation and it is fluid, and even exchanges or bartering take place, the magic of feeling supported, motivated, and beyond that, accompanied shoulder to shoulder emerges. The best strategy will always be camaraderie, Tis. To that end, I have something I would like to share in future discussions as one of the best methods for this contest, but I still have to work on it. I don't know yet if it will be entirely functional, but I have a feeling that it will be. For now, I would like to refrain from sharing more details because I haven't put it into practice yet. But for now, I can tell you that camaraderie is the main and one of the best strategies for staying strong in a contest of mayors, as well as in wars, designs, etc. On the other hand, I think the best method is proving very fruitful, as I can see from my community and the new club I'm in, that colleagues like Marce, who I think is from Playa Dorada, have already demonstrated the effectiveness of this method. Other colleagues, when this new version of the contest came out, showed us that they had won the top prizes, despite having no prior knowledge of this type of information.
What you're saying isn't one of the best tips, but one of the best tricks for the newcom.
Well, I think that if we anticipate and are very proactive in doing many items before starting a contest, then that's really when, as you mentioned a moment ago, we become contest beasts, right? I think that's it. Well, I would have more information to share, but I think I've already emphasized enough in relation to what you asked.
I invite you to share your thoughts as you develop them. But following on from what you say, there are indeed 2 basic things in the best method. First, step number 1 is preparation prior to the contest of mayors, because that is the most important thing for doing well in the contest. But the second, which I emphasize a lot throughout the method, is having a good club. And a good club is not about one person talking or everyone talking among themselves. It's about feedback. I have a video somewhere. I think it's private. but it's the key to achieving things that you can't easily achieve on your own. And for that, you need the commitment of several people in a club. A club is good when there are several people who give as much as they receive. That's a key strategy, especially now in the new contest of mayors.
In that regard, precisely what we are discussing, I would like to highlight a point that I particularly dislike. It is the issue of the duration of contests. It was known that they lasted 6 days, if I remember correctly, which was just enough time to complete the tasks. Now they last longer. What I dislike is not the extra time they give to complete a contest, but the fact that there is no longer an interval between contests. So you have to finish even earlier than estimated in order to prepare if you want to compete in the next one, because otherwise, the fact that a new contest starts is a disadvantage, at least in this new version.
Look, the contest lasted 5 days. Then they extended it to 6, then to 7, then back to 5, and now it's back to 7 again. And what's clear is that you need time to prepare, and if you don't prepare, you're not effective in the contest. So, as you say, another very important piece of advice. You have to finish the contest early, or at least have it more or less prepared 2 days before so you can prepare for the next one. That's excellent advice, really. Nacho, you've won 2 contests out of 2 possible. You're off to a great start. Does everything new motivate you?
At first, the changes throw you off a bit, but they also break you out of your routine and give you the chance to try something new. It motivates me. Well, it does discourage you a little when there are so many mistakes at first. It's been one of the biggest changes we've had, and you think, where are they going with this? What are they trying to achieve? It makes you feel a bit uneasy and anxious because you don't know if you're messing up or not, but I don't think they care. I mean, it's a matter of supply and demand. They're obviously trying to make money, but they're not stupid. They also need people who... You can't take anyone out of the equation. I mean, there may be people who buy absolutely everything, people who buy occasionally, and people who may not buy at all, but they can all be interesting because the more people know about the game, the more new gamers can come in and spend money, which is where they can do business. It wouldn't be smart to restrict it only to those who pay.
Obviously, they have to have potential. They can't rule out thousands of gamers for some silly reason. I'm sure they've thought it through because they're not stupid. Nacho, do you see him as a leg? Well, like me, I think camaraderie is one of the best strategies for being highly competitive.
Oh, of course. Teamwork helps a lot, not only in terms of strategies, but also when it comes to helping each other. If you give a lot, you also receive a lot. Just today, I needed 2 cups of coffee, and I thought, let's see if, and because you can't find that in global trade anymore, not even close, no way. And right away, a colleague brought me some. I believe that just like in life, what you give, you get back. And that's essential. Collaboration makes us stronger.
In any case, I think the developers are introducing all these changes so that we don't always play the same way. Because if it were always the same, we would eventually get tired of it. I know that many people are conformists and adapt to a certain way of playing and don't like change. But you also have to understand that playing the same game for 10 years needs a change. It's like a war. In the end, something will change. It will have to change, if not this year, then next year, and if not, the year after, but it will change. The same structure for so many years ends up getting tiresome, and I think the developers are very aware of this if they want the game to be dynamic and changing. And that's what's happening. Well, I was trying to remember because my memory isn't very good, but I remember that for several weeks now, there has been a kind of evolution on the part of the developers to try to catch the crackers. And mind you, I'm talking about crackers, not hackers. Understood? Just a few days ago, I saw a hacker reach level 38 of the Mayor's Pass in the new contest. And you realize that you reach level 38 with 800,000 points. Yes, of course, we're talking about pass points. That is, the purple points. And of course, I don't know if you realize what this means. Before, you got there with 460,000, if I remember correctly. And people were already starting to think that the developers had made the Mayor's Pass more difficult, but that's not the case. If you analyze it, you'll see that there's a geometric progression that makes each contest give you more points than the previous one. So purple points offer more than lead points. So it's not the same as the previous COM. I don't know if I'm explaining myself clearly. The previous COM had a set number of points, the plumb bob points, and now, by changing it to purple points, pass points, they've given it different values. So, The fact that a city reaches level 38 with 800,000 points when it used to be 460,000 doesn't mean anything. It's not like people think, oh, it's much harder now. No, it's not real. But the sad thing about this, in my opinion, is that the developers have let people believe that this is the case. Letting people believe that the pass is more difficult is disappointing. Dedicate one person for one day to provide accurate information about everything new so that people don't get scared.
Yes, indeed. At this point, I wanted to share a possible hypothesis. Well, actually, it would be more of an assumption. What would happen, Tis, if I told you that in addition to implementing a new contest of mayors, because I read something about it, an update was going to be released in which the haunted house would actually appear. They don't mention it in those terms, but it's implied. What do I mean? What would happen if I told you that regardless of how complex and difficult it may seem, it has become the new way to hunt down these hackers or crackers? Why am I telling you this?
No, I completely agree, and I know it.
So imagine that this is one of the issues that has concerned us the most for quite some time, because it's nothing new. This goes back a long way. Even since the game came out, there has been some manipulation. In the end, it seems that they are starting to take us into consideration a little bit, or that they have paid some attention to the issue of those who tend to manipulate these systems. So what do you think of this new mechanism? What if I told you that their intention is to catch them? How is it possible that some users reach the maximum plumb bob points or purple gems so quickly, without knowing that there are very obvious complexities, such as the production tasks in commercial buildings, which for me are one of the most difficult tasks because they take 4 or 5 cheetah tokens? What would happen if those people, because they finished that task so quickly, started using too much SIM cash? That's when they start paying attention, or rather putting them under the microscope to see who these gamers are and maybe even ban them. We would have to analyze whether they have really reduced the number of hackers or whether they have remained the same or increased. That's why I think this new system is aimed at this type of manipulator.
I'll tell you more. Setting the first limit at 130,000 plumb bob points was, in my opinion, a test. And the proof is that anyone who exceeds that limit is automatically located. I think it's easy to understand because it's a very simple system that provides developers with powerful tools to kick out gamers who manipulate the game. And that's a good thing. We'll have to see what stage of implementation it's at right now.
If I may, I think they may have wanted to give us the opportunity to comment on how this new contest is working. It's somewhat disguised, and there seems to be some misinformation. So what would happen if they were doing it under the table? I'm not sharing information about how the contest works with the intention of drawing attention to this issue that has concerned us for some time, game manipulation.
I would know what to do. If I were a developer, I would know how to hunt them down. That would be the issue. Both here and in wars, there are many ways to do it stealthily and hunt them all down. How do you say it? A massive cleanup, and I think it's feasible. The only thing is that they have to implement it well, because doing it wrong can cause a lot of problems. Then once they've implemented the system well and fixed all the bugs, we might see a reduction in manipulated cities, or whatever you want to call them, which is often just moving them to a separate server where legal gamers aren't in contact with them. And that would be great for the game, because at the end of the day, the game has to make a profit. If it doesn't, the game doesn't move forward and disappears. I believe Track 20 had a staff of at least 40 programmers, and that's a large staff. To maintain it over time, they have to be receiving money from people who pay for passes, the VUPAS, and various other things in the game. And obviously, they have to take care of that. Let's not think that the people at EA or Track 20 are stupid. They obviously fail in some things, but I think that in others they have to go down the path of fixing them. Do you think this is the beginning of something bigger? I mean, after all these changes again with COM, and the very feasible hypothesis we've discussed about the new COM, which is already designed to give developers enough tools for mass hunting with a significant purge of manipulated cities, do you think it's for something bigger? For something that's coming?
Well, I don't know, but I hope so. That's my expression. I hope so. But I think it's difficult because the limitation on the number of points in the mayor's pass is clear. It cannot be exceeded, and they will realize this because if there is a maximum, they will automatically catch whoever has the most.
Sure.
It's much more complicated than that. Perhaps you could see it, I mean, without being a computer expert or anything, but as we said before, if there is a limit to the number of additional tasks we can do because of the golden tickets, and there are people who don't have that limit, they could catch them. But anyway, it's very complicated. This would really be for hackers. I have my doubts. Because just like when we go to war, we reach a certain level, and we know that we are entering hacker territory, and it's impossible to fight. because hackers systematically appear, and that totally disappoints you because you can't win anymore. In the contest of mayors, I didn't have the perception that anyone could be a hacker, although there may have been, but as I've always been among the top prizes, I've even doubted that what interest would a hacker have in a contest of mayors to win some SIM cash? They can get that by hacking.
I've had problems with hackers in the contest. I mean, I was in first place, then a hacker jumped ahead of me and took first place, leaving me in second, but I was able to recover. That happened a couple of years ago, and I reported it. When I reported it, they acted very quickly. Banned him, and I got to keep the 2,000. And that didn't just happen to me once, you know? It's happened to me, I'd say 3 or 4 times. It was interesting because they acted quickly and well. Above all, it seems that COM takes it more seriously. That's why I was telling Leg that the 130,000 limit at the beginning was to catch crackers, illegal hackers.
It makes me really angry because you come across gamers on opposing teams who have everything at level 20. Yeah, we've been playing for so many years. Yeah, we devote so much time to it, and even so, the game should have banned them by now. It should have realized that it's impossible. It's impossible to achieve. Well, I don't think so, but maybe there are supermen out there, although I find that hard to believe, because I haven't reached level 20 in anything. I mean, look, I've reached the maximum storage capacity, which I think is a great achievement, but level 20 in attacks, I don't have any, and it's possible to get there, right? I think, for example, if I had focused on magnetism, as I mentioned before, it would be possible, but not on a shield buster.
No, look. John, on the Maple Pecan Chico Club team, he has magnetism at 20, and he's achieved that with a lot of hard work. But obviously he doesn't have the others at that level. He's got them pretty high, because he's got an incredible level of wars, but he can't have them all at 20. That's unthinkable.
I can believe getting one level 20 attack, but all of them at level 20. No way.
Sure, I totally agree with you, Nacho. Go on. I feel like I interrupted you.
Don't worry. I just want to clarify that if what we are discussing is a positive hypothesis, it is something highly commendable. What do I mean? The fact that they are doing it quietly or very cautiously and are effectively carrying out a massive hunt is something that, in my opinion, we were all hoping for. Let these types of gamers begin to fade away or be eliminated, as they are the main source of disappointment with the game, as well as demotivation and so on. So on that front, if that's the case and they're doing it this way because, as far as I understand, it was known that there was going to be an update that would address this issue, it seems that this is it. So imagine if this is true and we start to see fewer and fewer manipulated accounts, regardless of the complexities of COM, VU, and so on. Needless to say, it would be something magnificent.
Hopefully it's true and they get down to work with the purge, because there are a lot of gamers who get discouraged by all this. I mean, the gamers who play by the rules are the ones who disappoint you the most.
Sure. And do you think there's a risk that it could become too complex, Nacho?
No, I think many gamers have pointed this out, but in the end, it's not that big of a deal.
I think it's adaptation, right?
Yes, it's a matter of adaptation, and we'll soon see that it's not very complicated. I think you have to be clear about your goals. If that's what we were talking about before, if your goal is to reach 550, it's very easy. You don't have to complicate your life or do a lot of calculations. Now we're competing a little more for the sake of trying. We're not going to be able to compete at the highest level in every competition. Maybe you can compete every week, but you have to be smart and compete like Fermin Cacho, who we were talking about earlier.
That's clear. Well, if you agree, let's give all our listeners some useful advice beyond what you've already said. Those of you who aren't satisfied with gold but want records, trophies, and photos, give us some tips, something that's helping you get the most out of this new contest of mayors.
Of course, look, I've never had any problem with that. I've never kept secrets about tips and tricks because I think that you, me, and many of our colleagues want this to work within the community. And we've realized that your videos serve as training and feedback material for us so that when new gamers join our community, they arrive with their eyes open and with the best attitude to learn each of these tricks that we've been using at different times and in different contexts of the game. To that end, I want to share some tricks that I've highlighted, at least in this new contest system, the milestones. The topic of milestones, the weekly tasks, which for me are still milestones, haven't changed much, just the name. So what do I recommend? First of all, having a secondary account helps a lot. Why? Because you can have your own storage in your secondary account or choose to have the trade depot as a secondary storage, that is, as a private trade with yourself. As long as you have this account stocked with the resources or items you usually use. Yes, these are the ones you are most often asked for in most tasks. That is one of the main tips I give them. Expand these storage facilities on both your main and secondary accounts. And once you have fully expanded any of those cities, put your trade depots to good use as private storage facilities. Why do I say this? Because global trade has become another problem, which I would even like to address if you like, since useful resources are no longer found, only junk. And I dare say this because there are many resources that are no longer even used, or they are used, but they are too expensive. We have already completed the mountain and beach expansions, and they are no longer of any use to us.
I just wanted to point out that expanding the raw material storage and clearing out the usual storage space means that people can keep more in their storage, which reduces sales. Someone asked me, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, what was happening in the global market, why they always saw the market in the same way, with the same items that are practically useless. And I replied that it was simply because the developers had expanded the storage capacity. This means that people don't need to sell what they have left over, because they can store it.
And watch out, Tees, because a few weeks ago when this new system was introduced, there were still some useful resources on the global market, but now there are no raw materials left. Got that? Now it's in your best interest to manufacture raw materials and save them. We're talking about sugar, the blessed chips, as we call them, and glass, among other things. The resources that are most difficult to manufacture must be protected. You have to be clear about that.
Yes.
So you have to be careful because it wasn't like that before. Before there was a lot of raw material, so you could put it into production and speed up the process, right? But not now. Now you can't find raw materials or essential resources. That's why it is. I'm going to give you another piece of trick that actually comes from one of your videos, although I don't know if it's in English.
Come on.
This is just some feedback, and I don't remember if you handled it this way, but I definitely think the game has a reverse psychology. What do I mean? It seems like the more you have of something, the more you get, and the less you have, the less you get, because that's what you need. Instead of supporting you through global market with what you don't have, the game will limit you. Why? So that you make it yourself, so that you ask your teammates for support. In other words, the game itself encourages you to be a teammate or to generate that camaraderie with others. Here goes. If I don't have watermelons, then logically, I'm not going to find them very often. And I say almost never, because before this new system, they were almost never found on the global market. So what's going to happen? Make them constantly, and the more you have in your storage, the sooner you'll realize that you have around 30 or 40 watermelons. It happens to me, and that's a trick I've discovered. I have around 30 or 40 watermelons. I go into the global because I think maybe I need a resource that I know I'll find there. Then out of nowhere, watermelons start appearing. So what's going on there, Tiz? Well, I have more and more watermelons. I'm telling you, I have about 60 watermelons. Obviously, I'm not going to keep them all because they'll fill up my storage. So what do? What's the procedure? When you have that surplus of watermelons, you can tell a colleague in the chat, hey guys, does anyone need watermelons? Oh no, we don't need any. Then you send them to them. And at the same time, tasks that need watermelons appear. And before you know it, 2 or 3, 4, 5 or 6 colleagues already have watermelons. Then when tasks that need watermelons appear, we all have them.
There's a trick I've never revealed, which is a bit risky, but it seems to be true. As you just mentioned, when you have a limited product, it feels like the game is hiding it from you. We don't know if that's the case, but it seems like it's hiding the fact that you can get that product on the global market, and we think it's so that you'll produce it, because there's a very subtle way of achieving the opposite effect. The trick is to visit the market towns and open their balloons. The balloons you open are more likely to give you the product you need. I'm not saying that when you need a watermelon, you go to a market town, open the town gift balloon, and get that watermelon. What I'm saying is that the probability of it happening is much higher. That means that if you need that watermelon, you're very likely to get it there because the game uses a kind of intelligence to understand what you need at any given moment. And in that case, it helps you. In the same way that, as you mentioned, the game reduces what you have in the smallest quantities in the global market, which seems quite plausible. I also said that the balloons in rival cities have the opposite effect. Of course, don't expect to find 5 watermelons this way, but when you're missing something specific, be sure to try this method.
But I'll give you the trick, Tis, okay? Because you're right. What you say makes sense. It's like an algorithm that the game itself uses. Why am I telling you this, Tis? Because look, there are tasks where it asks me to make, for example, measuring tapes. It asked me to manufacture. Last time it asked me for 30 tape measures and I already had a lot. I had about 20 plus those 30 makes 50. Suddenly, I realize in the chat that my colleagues need them because they have a task that requires them. So it seems like we're separate pieces of a puzzle. What do I mean by that? That what one person has in abundance, another needs. That's why teamwork is so efficient, effective, and productive, because this sometimes what you have most is exactly what someone else needs. And when you, as a teammate, limit that support because you think you have it and the other person needs it, that's when the game gets complicated. However, if you share what you have with those who need it, the game flows. Before you know it, your partner will be making sugar and you will start performing new tasks for which you will need sugar. But if your partner kept that sugar, imagine it's like killing two, three, four, or five birds with one stone.
Yes, I totally agree, because I also know that it works. I really insist that everyone who starts or asks knows this. Give feedback to your teammates. In other words, your club is the most important thing, so keep that in mind. Give everything you can, because you'll get the same in return, I'm sure of it. And it's always been that way, hasn't it? Always.
And I think, Tease, that I may be speculating a little, but based on the new system, as well as the previous one, what we usually keep in our storage are products that take a long time to manufacture. For example, watermelons. If I store a surplus of 50 watermelons, there are colleagues who store the same amount or more or less, I don't know. Then we start getting a lot of tasks that use watermelons. Do you understand? So it seems that the tasks you're going to be asked to do most are the ones that are most abundant in the club. It's speculation, but I've noticed that sometimes they ask for what I have the most, and what I sometimes need is what others have. So it's an algorithm that we can read if we start to communicate. Communication, regardless of camaraderie. Imagine if we used communication. I don't think we have any problems with that in our community. We are extremely active in that area.
Perfect, Leg. Tell me, Nacho, can you think of any tricks you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, we've already talked about camping. I think it's very special. It's very interesting. You don't have to try to progress in a city at level 99. You're already getting into any task is a complication. When you get tasks from these new products, from the new factories, they're super complicated. The simpler your city is, the easier it is to progress with less effort and time. Therefore, the advice is that when choosing a task, try not to do tasks to increase or improve residential zones. To do this, you have to choose the task that gives you the most points at a given moment, precisely to play with the algorithm. Choose it, don't do it, and wait for a new and different one to come up. If you get a new residential task that is worth 1,000 instead of 3,600, you've already won, because you know you already have. The algorithm will make the task easier for you. There won't be so many residential tasks. In the end, I have a lot of residential tasks, and I'm always playing, especially at the end of each com. I can't do several at once because I could do them, but they would be very small tasks. So I'm always playing with one or two tasks that I want to work on. That would be my advice.
Perfect trick. Well, since we're unraveling the secrets of the new contest, it turns out we're not the only ones with questions. The Discord channel has been flooded with questions, comments, crazy theories, and the occasional, "Why are they doing this to me?" So I've brought some of those questions here to ask our guests live, so they can give us their unfiltered wisdom. Let's start with the first one. This one comes from Reaper 2. Reaper is a very smart guy who analyzes everything very well. In fact, he helped me create some tables for the new weekly tasks. He's the president of the second Maple Pecan Chico Club, the most important English club associated with Isla Atlas, and he asked the question. Let's see where I have it. Ah, yes, here. Is it worth participating in the contest of mayors? Has anyone managed to get 550 without cash, without paying real money?
Well, I'll hand over to Nacho because I've had to invest a little SIM cash to analyze this new contest and see if it's possible to win, especially to be able to get the star prize.
Yes, I get it every week. I usually buy, right now, I only buy the Rusadir monthly premium pass. And the others, no, I don't buy them. I don't buy them with the two, and I get everything. It's easy.
The second question was asked by Davita. Since the questions were asked through Discord, I know most of the people who asked them. Davita is the president of Club ESOS, associated with the Isla Atlas Federation. That club was founded by my friend Bravos, who doesn't play anymore. And he passed the presidency on to someone he trusted, which was Davita. Davita asked if anyone else had received the task of improving the storage without being able to expand it. I think we've already answered that, but...
Well, Tis, before answering, I think of our colleague Davita. I must point out that whether it was a long time or a short time, depending on when you are listening to this conversation, she had the opportunity to stand out as the first, as someone outstanding in the topic of design, which is why she came in first place overall. She achieved what is, what do you call it in this case? Something like an outstanding design worldwide. So I want to congratulate her because she is very good at the design challenge. We hope to hear from her soon so she can tell us about her career in the world of design. And for my part, congratulations, Davita. And thank you for allowing us to ask these kinds of questions. In response to the question, I think the issue of storage has been very controversial, as many of us have reached the capacity limit, which is 1000 plus 20 for each region in the common storage facility. But there is another storage facility for materials, which is why I was afraid that this storage facility would have to be expanded just like the main storage facility. I thought it also needed to be expanded little by little using these resources called SI, which are items that expand storage. So I was afraid that I hadn't expanded it enough. I didn't need much, but it hadn't been that long since I last expanded it. Going back to expanding storage is a bit tiring, don't you think? However, I thought it was feasible because completing storage tasks earns quite a lot of points. We're talking about 6,000 double points or 3,000 normal points. It works the same way in this new system. So those points are very useful because you can earn them very quickly. What do I mean? You can complete that task in no time, as long as you have these items, the SI.
Now that you mention it again, for our listeners, SI stands for storage items. To refer to them, especially in the game chat, we usually abbreviate them to SI so we can type faster. It's an Isla Atlas convention, but I wanted to clarify it in case anyone didn't understand.
Perfect, Tease. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. The storage expansion is a task that, in my case, unfortunately keeps appearing even though I've already filled my storage, and I think that's the problem that many of my fellow players are also having. That task keeps appearing even though they've already filled their storage to maximum capacity. Therefore, I believe that this task should be adjusted in future versions, in the coming weeks, in future updates, as the algorithm of this new system is not adapting to the experience of each city. Understood? There are cities that are just starting out, and for them this task is perfect, no problem. Expanding the storage by 10 items and completing it is wonderful. But for us who have been playing for a while and have already completed it, it's a limitation. What do I mean? It's even harmful. Why am I telling you this? Because there are level 99 cities like mine that haven't expanded their storage yet. So what happens if they haven't expanded and I have? They're going to complete that task and get ahead of me, regardless of whether I have a good have completed the 10 milestones and the 75 daily tasks. But if they did manage to complete that task, then they have an advantage over me. And now add to that the fact that for me, this is a source of discontent. At some point, if the programmers and everyone behind this game were to hear this, they would realize that the fact that they are already selling Plumbob points is a disadvantage. It's an advantage for those who buy them, right? But for those of us who are competing, it really hurts us. And for me, that was really bad. I understand that these are measures taken by programmers to make more money. That's fine, but the fact that they sell you points so that you can win, well, that's paying to win. That's really paying to win. That's a pretty big disadvantage. For me, it's completely wrong on the part of those who implemented that part. Well, but back to the storage issue. What do I do when that task appears? Since just having it means I've already expanded my storage, I cancel it. Unfortunately, I spend 30 tickets and delete it. Another task appears and I have to do the one that gives me the most points. But every time it appears, I delete it. And why do I delete it? Because it's the task that gives me the most points. I would limit myself to more tasks with the same number of points, which worked for me. At least in my last tournament, I won. I deleted it 2 or 3 times and still managed to win, leaving a lead of about 30,000 points.
Actually, that's the first thing I noticed in mine. It's come up several times and it's very profitable because it costs several golden tickets and you get a lot of points. But I don't even have the option to do it. I do it in other cities. I pass what Rusadir gets to Nacholandia and Heracles, who still have room for improvement, but in this one it's wasted. And in some cases, I've given it to them to do as if it were one of those residential zones that I occasionally cancel so that another task comes up. And, well, looking for the algorithm to work in my favor, right?
Sure. Well, you know, Davita, you're not the only one. We're all here and it'll happen to all of us sooner or later. I've been lucky that it hasn't happened to me yet, but hey, that could change tomorrow.
It is also important to note that the raw material storage and general storage are different. Care must be taken when upgrading. When doing so, you need to be very careful about what you upgrade. At first, I thought that by automatically switching to this new raw material storage system, we would get almost half of the general storage capacity we had. I thought that by upgrading the storage, it would automatically be upgraded, but no, they are independent. So you have to be careful when deciding what you really want to upgrade. And I would always say the general storage. And secondly, if you get a task, I think the task that comes up only affects the general storage and not the raw material storage. If you improve the raw material storage with a lot of storage items, you may be disappointed to find that it is useless.
Yes, that's right. Thanks for clarifying that. I'm sure it will help some listeners. Davita also asked what the new maximum score would be in the contest of mayors, whether it would be around 265,000 plum bob points. But I think it's quite a bit higher.
Maybe, not me. I haven't reached 300,000 yet.
Excellent question, Tis. It's an excellent question because it was indeed one of the biggest mysteries we had. How many points could be achieved? Why? Well, because there was a limit on purple gems. Knowing that you no longer have to complete tasks, but that you can do them regardless of how you've done or the scope of the pass, it's wonderful to be able to keep earning points. So, to answer that question, it is no longer possible to reach 250,000, 260,000, or 240,000, which was more or less the range, although you may disagree, but you can now reach over 300,000. In my last or second to last contest, I managed to score almost exactly 300,000 points. As for my clubmates, I want to express my gratitude to Fondo, Su, Mar, Inuika, and all my fellow members of the Isla Atlas 1B club, now in Isla Atlas 1 club. They have shared some screenshots with me of the scores they got in their contests, but there is one variable. In some contests, they exceed 300,000 points, and in others they don't, but it's a matter of adaptation. But the answer is that you can get more than 300,000 points because there are 75 additional tasks, plus the daily ones and the milestones. And I'm talking about completing 10 milestones. You don't just have to complete the ones that appear, you have to reserve 4 or 5. You can complete the 10 milestones by playing with the discs. Those green discs that I don't know what we call each one, I call them discs, but that disc can be completed up to the second point and you cancel the task. Then activate the next task so that you don't miss any milestones, okay? That way you can earn more than 300,000 points.
Lollipop belongs to the Tartesos Club, but she was asking you directly, Leg, how it was possible that Legion Man did 70 additional tasks and kept more than 2,000 gold tickets. So the question is for you, Leg.
Okay. Hi, Lollipop. Thank you for your question. At the same time, I recognize that you are an excellent colleague because you have already provided us with a lot of information about the designs, the contest, and other topics. However, regarding your question, it is true that I have a surplus of 2,600 tickets, at least for that contest, which is no longer the current one, but the previous one. But why do I have this surplus? Because I had accumulated tickets from contests prior to this update. I had around 700 or 600, I don't remember exactly, but that was already a surplus. On the other hand, I think it's clear that tickets can be purchased by buying a pass. I bought the basic premium pass. I didn't want to buy the one with more points because normally when the programmers do their job well, I tend to buy quite a few passes. But when I consider their work to be medium, well, I don't give them as many benefits because I feel they can try harder. So when I bought that mayor pass, I got tickets, which are plentiful, as they give you between 250 and 300. I don't remember the exact ranges, but they give you quite a few tickets. Regardless of the fact that I already finished my contest tasks, I even finished it in 3 days as part of my experiment. I mean, I usually finish contests in 4 or 5 days or even sooner. But this time I did invest time because I wanted to know how long it takes to finish a contest. At the same time, I wanted to know how many tickets were used. Approximately 1,800 tickets are used, but it can vary. I still have to analyze it because I need to do some research, but between 1,500 and 1,800 tickets are used depending on the case. On the other hand, as I've already told you, you'll have tickets left over in those seasons when you don't participate, in those weeks when you're just trying to qualify and not win a bigger prize, so your tickets will accumulate. So, I consider that these will be cumulative, but you have to consider that if you are very competitive every week, you will reach the ticket limit. So it is advisable that you also take your time, that you take certain weeks, some months or whatever, so that your tickets accumulate and you have more leftover, more passive tickets than you need to use, right? So the more you accumulate, the better. Since there are seasons that, as we all know, are not to our liking, there are many buildings that we are not interested in, that we do not like, so you can buy the pass, earn the necessary points, qualify, and accumulate tickets. That's how you'll be able to play in future contests, okay?
Let me clarify, Leg, just to make it clearer for those listening. The cost of golden tickets will also depend on how you play. I mean, what your goal is at any given time. If you go all out and use all 75 additional tasks, spending an average of about 30 tickets, as Nacho said, then it comes to 2,250. With that figure, you can understand the cost of entering a contest to win the second prize of 1,000 SimCash or the first prize of 2,000 SimCash, as Leg just made clear. It's a significant expense. Obviously, you can take it easier or be more economical. That will depend on the league you're in. In that case, you'll probably use around the 1,800 tickets that Leg mentioned, but even so, it's still an expense to be taken into consideration. Another question, Novato, is from a gamer who is between Tartesos and Maple Clubs and said, "Good afternoon. To reach 550 without cash, how many points do you have to earn in the com? Approximately in a normal week and in a double points week. I think I've already answered this because I said it was 800,000 pass points. Before, there were 460,000, now there are 800,000, but the difficulty is the same. You shouldn't focus too much on the points because you get there the same way. In any case, we'll confirm this over the coming weeks.
To answer that question a little more, I'll tell you that I'm not sure either, but believe me, it doesn't depend on an exact data. It depends more on the competitors you're up against in your contest or in your ranking, okay? It depends on your level. There are several factors. Your level, what week it is, whether it's a double points week, an epic week, or a purple gem week, which also double. So, you can't know exactly how many points you need to get to 550 SimCash. I couldn't answer that question accurately because I usually play for 3 weeks and 1 or 2 I don't qualify, or I qualify just to get the minimum prize of 25 SimCash. That's my intention, every month at least, to win a contest prize. So I always aim for 2,000 or nothing. If I'm going to work on the com, it's to win at least 2,000, but if I'm not going to make an effort, I'll just stay in the rankings. So I apologize for not knowing that information.
Alright, well now I'd like to finish with a round of questions. Just say yes or no, okay? Try not to stray from that short answer and get too involved, okay? And be honest. Come on, are you ready?
Yeah, totally ready.
Ready?
Let's get started. Do you like the new format of the Contest of Mayors? Leg, yes or no?
Yes.
Nacho, yes or no?
Yes.
Do you think you'll win the same amount as before in the contest? Nacho?
No.
Leg?
Yes.
Do you know any other tricks for the contest that you haven't mentioned? Leg?
Yes.
Nacho?
Maybe, but not much more.
What sneaky devils? I've got a few tricks up my sleeve for the best method too. But anyway, you've given some good advice and I think this podcast has helped to clarify the new contest, which was the whole point. Okay, one more quick question. Do you think people will give up the game after the new Contest of Mayors? Leg?
Yes.
Nacho, yes or no?
Yes, there will always be people for everything.
Well, I already know that at least Leg is going to answer this question, but anyway. Do you like your city? Leg?
Sure, I'd love to. It's a yes.
Nacho?
Hey, no, I've been very practical and haven't gone. I'm not particularly innovative in design. I'm not much of a designer.
Have you ever purchased the Premium Pass or War Pass? Well, Leg already answered that question. Yes, right?
Yes.
Nacho, yes or no?
Not from View, but the Premium Pass, yes.
Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and remembered that you forgot to do something in the game, and then you got back into it just to do it? Nacho, has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Leg?
Yes.
Have you ever felt part of something bigger than just a game?
Quite a lot, yes.
Yes, that too.
Will you keep playing even if everything changes again?
Yes.
Yes, I don't know for how long. I don't plan on being 90 years old playing SimCity BuildIt, but we'll see.
Would you participate in another episode of the podcast if I invited you?
Completely yes.
Yes, if we have things to say, I'd be happy to attend again.
Would you laugh if someone told you that this is just a game?
Well, yes, I did.
Nacho?
Yeah, me too. I think it's more than just a game.
Do you think this podcast has been more fun than a round of view attacks?
Yes, definitely.
Another round of attacks, Fu? I think so. Maybe not another war. There are battles with impressive endings that leave you with a great taste in your mouth, but this was worth it. Yes, it was. It was good.
There are some very good wars indeed, but I'm satisfied with this podcast. Before turning off the microphones, I want to thank our 2 stars today, Legion Man and Nacholandia. Gentlemen, if you want to leave the audience with one last spark, now is your moment. Nacho?
Well, that's it. I'm glad I took part. I'd also like to encourage everyone who can to drop by because we're a great community and I'm happy to belong to this group of people who are behind these cities and this game. We're a great community. We all support each other. And this is just to reiterate what we've said to fully answer the question we discussed earlier, right? It's a little more than just a game. We don't go beyond that, but friendships are formed in the game, and it's also nice to be with people, even if it's limited to this aspect, which is also part of real life, although we've always said that what's important is outside the game. But anyway, this is also a small part of our lives.
Of course. Go ahead, Leg.
Okay, cool. Well, I think the question of whether I kept some tricks or tips to myself rather than keeping them to myself is the combination of your videos, Tis. You know what I mean? There are a lot of tricks you can combine and get a lot of benefit from. At some point, if you'll allow me, I can share much more about what I do and how I prepare for a competition in another podcast, so I have no problem with that. At the same time, you have to analyze the competitions a lot, not just the points, but also the tasks you have to choose. As for the rest, well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share all this information today, Tis. At the same time, I would like to extend my thanks to Isla Atlas 1, well, to all those colleagues with whom I also lived, and also to each of the colleagues with whom I have lived in the different clubs. And of course, I am grateful for all the support I have received from my colleagues at Isla Atlas 1B, who have been excellent. And I would like to thank the programmers because they are doing something. It may not be the best, but it's not the worst either. Thank you very much. Many, many thanks to the community. Thank you very much, Isla Atlas. Thank you very much, Tees. See you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nacho. It has been a brief, almost liminal stroll down those avenues where strategy and intuition intertwine. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this first episode, and a very special thank you to Legioman and Nacholandia, two true titans of the Contest of Mayors, for joining us in this madness, for your honesty, and for making this chat so enjoyable and entertaining. There will be more episodes, more maps to unfold, more mysteries and tricks to unravel. And you know, before you leave the game, send your trains, collect your simoleons and your daily chest, and visit your neighbor Daniel. Do it and tell him I sent you. There is no such thing as a perfect city, but there is the impulse to try. And it is in that attempt that the game makes sense. I am Atlantis, just another gamer, albeit one with more octagonal ideas than golden keys. And believe me, I have a good handful of keys. We'll hear from you in the next episode. Until then, may your skyscrapers continue to point to the sky, and may your ambition never hit the ceiling.